So I need to insert a quick beginning here that just warns you that there's going to be the conversation of someone taking their life, because that was a theme in tonight's episode. So if you get disturbed by that or find that triggering, you probably don't want to watch the first 5 minutes of this video. Maybe go in to like past that point. Also, I wanted to say there's a big live with Kim D on Thursday, which is by the time I drop this video on YouTube today, because it's so early in the morning. And so I hope you guys will join us at that. It's going to be at 12 noon East Coast time and 9 a.m. Pacific Standard. We're spilling some New Jersey gossip that we heard, Real Housewives of New Jersey. We're also going to be talking about a feud between Erika Jayne Girardi and Denise Richards that's happening off camera, and some other Real Housewives of Beverly Hills gossip and stuff that Kim wanted to discuss with me. I'm on the live tab of my channel for this YouTube live with Kim D. Hi, you guys. Hope you're well. So it was a tough episode tonight, right? We're really focusing mainly on Kyle Richards and the loss of her best friend who took her life. So it's not the first time that we've covered suicide on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Remember back in season 2, Taylor Armstrong's husband also did towards the end of the shooting of the season, and they did do an episode talking about it. You know, it was very difficult for everybody. Obviously, Taylor was at that time a very good friend of mine, and so was Russell. So, you know, it was a pretty hard thing to go through. And here we see the topic come up again on season 13, this time with Lorraine Shea, who's Kyle Richards' best friend since she was 7 years old. And she was struggling with depression, and the system failed her, per Kyle Richards. And I guess tonight on the show, one of the last things that she said to Kyle Richards is, treasure your marriage. So one of the main events of the show tonight, which I'm going to get into, is a celebration of life for Lorraine Shea. And this was actually a charity event in real life. Kyle Richards had support from her family when she hosted an important charity event for a cause that is close to her heart. In April of 2023, The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star hosted a night of music in honor of her late best friend, Lorraine Shea. Shea died in 2022 following a struggle with mental illness, according to Page Six. She had been best friends with Kyle since they were 7 years old. The benefit for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, took place at the Floor Room in Los Angeles, California, and Kyle's family members, including her sister Kim, were on hand to support awareness for mental health. Now, Teddi Mellencamp attended the event with Kyle and Morgan Wade, and she actually was a sponsor of the event, Teddi Mellencamp. I thought you guys would find that interesting. So let me read this to you guys. Last week, I hosted a night of music in honor of my late best friend, Lorraine Shea. This is from Kyle Richards' Instagram. It was an emotional night made easier being surrounded by Lorraine's family, friends, and loved ones, as well as mine. Having us all together made for a very special night while raising awareness and money to support those struggling with their mental health through NAMI Communicate. Thank you at Morgan Wade Music for performing and making the night even more special by sharing your own personal stories. If you or someone you know is struggling with their mental health, there are resources like NAMI Communicate that are there to help. Thank you. And then you go through the different lists of sponsors, and in there's All In by Teddi Mellencamp. Yeah. So she, I guess, was a sponsor and went with Kyle to the show. Now, she doesn't feature too much in tonight's episode, except the editors being so shady only really show Teddi Mellencamp a little bit in the car and then a little bit at the event. And they actually have Garcelle call her a gnat again when she sees her at this event on the show. Like, I feel bad almost at this point for Teddi. Like, let's let the gnat thing go. Jeez. Bravo does love to drag Teddi. Another person impacted by suicide is Sutton Stracke, and we find out about her father who killed himself at 62. And we find out that she was supposed to be with him at the time that he did it, and she wasn't. And he had been struggling with, I guess, depression and been in and out of hospitals. And she felt a lot of guilt about this because she wasn't home when he did it. And so very difficult on her, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But she said the best thing to do is just to remember not to blame yourself, that there's nothing you can do, that it's out of your hands. You have to let it go. You have to forgive the person and yourself. Anyway, that's what I took away from Sutton's message. Here's a young Sutton, by the way. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to focus on the dynamics of Morgan Wade and Kyle Richards in this episode because Morgan performed and they were hanging out on the show. And, you know, everybody's watching how they interact. And is Kyle acting like she's more than just a friend and all these things? But I want to play this. This is Kyle Richards on an Amazon Live the other day. And I think you should hear it.
Amazon customer says, I read that you initially regretted introducing Morgan Wade to RHOBH. Can you elaborate on why? Yes, because it's this week's episode on this Wednesday, I guess it's tomorrow night, yep, is the episode where Morgan performs on the show. And she came on as a favor to me because my best friend, since I'm 7 years old, passed away. She committed suicide May 1st. And it was a really important event for me. It was a celebration of life. And I just wanted to bring more awareness and have suicide be more of an open conversation because it's such a taboo topic. And, you know, families that go through such a hard time suffering, the survivors, don't want to talk about it because there's shame. And so I really wanted to do an important episode and to honor Laureen and just to bring light to, you know, suicide and, you know, what it does to people and help people that are struggling, whether people struggling with depression or you're a survivor of, you know, losing someone. And Morgan has talked a lot about that in her music. Some songs, one of her songs, The Night, addresses that specifically. And she does two different versions of The Night. And she, you know, knew how much I was struggling with, you know, after losing Laureen, and she offered to, well, I asked her, and then she said, yes, she'd be happy to, because she was in the middle of touring, and she came and, you know, sang at this event, you know, as a favor to me. And all of a sudden, you know, she's an artist, you know, she just wants to make music, and all of a sudden she was thrust into this, like, world of gossip and tabloids and, you know, traveling and having, you know, paparazzi take pictures of her, and she just doesn't like any of that. You know, she doesn't want the attention, she doesn't want to be talked about, she just wanted to make music. And all of a sudden it was like, I had a lot of guilt, like, you know, that I put her in this position. And even though she would tell me, it's not your fault, of course I felt bad because it gave her anxiety, you know, seeing these headlines and just, like I said, being thrust into the spotlight brought her anxiety. And, you know, like myself, she suffers from anxiety, so I felt terrible to have put her in that position. Anyway, so I think she's kind of adjusted a bit to it now, but that doesn't, it's still not going away. It's all very new to her. And
anyway, that's all I really have to say about that part of the episode. It was really difficult. So I'm not going to cover that part any further in this video, but I will tell you the rest of what happened in tonight's episode. I'm also going to play you something to put you in a little cheery of a mood after this heavy topic. Here is Dorit Kemsley as a mermaid in Peter Pan in her 4 performances. I think it was 4, maybe it was only 2, in London at some theater. Here you go. She did it with Boy George. PK Kemsley produced the event in all its glory. This will put you in a great mood.
Magical mermaid, can you help us rescue Tinkerbell?
Aww, Tipsy!
was fabulous, Dory. Just fabulous. So we begin tonight's episode. Crystal Minkoff shows up at Kyle Richards' house. They're going off to Ojai for the day because they want to celebrate Anne Marie Wiley, Kyle's neighbor and new bestie for the show, birthday. And she's turning like, I don't know, it was barely like 42 or something. It's just so annoying. Damn her. Anyway, Erica sits this episode out. She has COVID and she doesn't show up at all except to wish the ladies well in the beginning of the episode. Tensions are high on the Sprinter van. The women all get together and some are drinking champagne because why not? And Kyle, of course, isn't. And Sutton is having a giant, looks like water with, I don't know, fruit in it, and it gives her indigestion. She burps and whatever. I don't know what it was, but she's drinking that, and she's offered champagne by Anne Marie Wiley, and she says, no, I'm doing this. Interesting way of saying it. Anyway, and then there was other people drinking coffee, whatever, and Crystal's palling around with Sutton. And so that's kind of where the episode begins. There's tension already between Sutton and Anne Marie. They get to the town and they decide to go shopping first. Dorit breaks out her Italian to talk about olive oil, but I think really just to show off her Italian. And then they move on to another shop and we sort of hear Kyle talk about how she loves to shop so much and she shops at least every day. And she tells you all the fun things you can buy when you shop, like go to 7-Eleven and shop and go to the airport store and shop and shop and go on and goes on and she's shopping, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But the real thing we find out is that Kyle Richards has lost her connection to Los Angeles. And in the next few years, when the opportunity presents itself, I guess probably when the show ends, she wants to move to someplace like, I don't know, Montana or out in the middle of nowhere where she can really just be in nature. She can canoe, she can work out, she can hike. She doesn't want to be in the city in Beverly Hills anymore. She doesn't feel the same connection to the place as she did before. And the women go to the winery, and I think Dolce caters, and Anne Marie's really, touched that Kyle Richards did this for her, and it's a beautiful setup. And the women are just chatting away and laughing and being really dumb together, and it's a very upbeat scene. And then Kyle breaks out this game where they dare each other to do stuff, and all the women really participate, even though it's really gross what they have to do. Sutton licks Kyle's toe. Sutton makes out with Dorit. Sutton just really wanted a lot of camera time, in my opinion, but she just kept doing pretty much whatever anybody put in front of her. Dorit and Kyle demonstrate a scissor kick or scissor, and it looks nothing like this. In this scene, we hear what I've been telling you guys, which is that Kyle Richards had complained in Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip that women were slipping into Mauricio's DMs, and she didn't like it. And she was catching some people in there communicating with him in a way that, with pictures and stuff like that, really upsetting. And we learn a little more information about that she has had a fight with Mauricio about a woman in particular who obviously didn't care about him being married and sending him a lot of texts and all this stuff. And then also Kyle brings up Mauricio feels the need to follow everyone, which I take to mean every woman that he encounters, and like their posts and, really almost come off as like he's flirting with the women that maybe he's coming in contact with through the agency or real estate or clients. I mean, let's face it, he comes in contact with a lot of women in a lot of ways. So Kyle says they had a fight over this, and this is now like the second time we've heard this publicly. So I'd say, you know what it is, right? And she just doesn't know how far some of this stuff went. Now, on this topic, I forgot to mention earlier that although Kim Richards and all of Kyle's kids go to the Lorraine Shea event, Mauricio does not go. Garcelle correctly points out that it really shows how rocky their relationship is, that he wasn't at that sort of event to support Kyle, which was already very tough on her emotionally. He was away. Then, out of the blue, Kyle Richards asks every woman at the table, would you date a woman? And Kyle, who's always been dead set against dating a woman, suddenly says, maybe. She basically says maybe. And then the other women comment that she's always seemed so dead set against it, and now she's at maybes, so what did that mean? And then Garcelle says, I would be open to dating a woman, and I think Sutton said she was open to dating a woman, and then the rest of the women said no. Now, there's some other scenes just worth noting in tonight's episode. Garcelle has a really funny scene with her two boys where she awkwardly tries to advise them about sex, and it's just hilarious. And it's actually such a relatable scene. I was like, oh my God, I was Garcelle in that scene with my son. So I really just loved it and appreciated it. It was so real and entertaining, and just I love how the boys just don't hold back, and they're exactly how I imagine they are in real life. And Garcelle, I think, keeps it so real when she's with them because of that. And there's another scene with Dr. Sarah and PK Kemsley and Dorit Kemsley, and she's supposed to be mediating their relationship. PK feels like Dorit has become entitled and high maintenance and has to have everything her way, and something's got to give, and she's kind of bitchy to him. And Dorit feels like PK is insensitive, always away, then rolls in, wants to control situations. And when he's away, he's not really supporting her, emotionally at all. And she's struggling with PTSD because she's been robbed a million times. And so she's always on a high alert. She's always on a high alert with a lot of anxiety, and I can't blame her because, she's robbed more than any other human being on the planet. So they have this moment. It's supposed to be, I think, touching. We see them go through this counseling. PK cries at the end. That's when I realized it was completely staged scene, because I really think that, PK crying was a bit much. I guess he cried because he felt like she was in so much pain. So we went from not giving a shit at all about Dorit's PTSD to weeping. True dat. Now, there is one little tidbit attached to Dorit tonight that I do want to mention. Dorit says a different story in the way that Morgan Wade and Kyle met. Kyle has said that she, heard her music in Colorado, and she was so touched by it. She reached out to Morgan Wade on Instagram, and they talked and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's how they became friends. Well, Dorit says that's not true, because what she remembers is the first time Kyle ever met Morgan Wade was when they were in London, and it was PK, Mauricio, Kyle, and Dorit, and Morgan Wade showed up at a dinner party, and they thought it was really strange with Mauricio and Kyle. And she goes, it was like 2 years ago. And she goes, funny, I never really saw Mauricio or Kyle after that night that Morgan Wade went to that dinner with all of us. And that's like the cliffhanger. And we're like, ooh, what does that mean? So obviously we're not getting the story on which they met, which I've already pointed out, because somehow there's a tie of Morgan Wade with her ex-boyfriend to Mauricio Umansky's the agency. So of course something's not right here, kids. Is something definitely off with the way we know they met. Anyway, I think Dorit's saying it for a different reason than it sounds. I think she's just trying to say, like, her friendship changed when Morgan Wade stepped in the picture, even from that early moment. But in a way, it's backfiring with all the other stuff we know, right? So anyway, just thought I'd mention that. So they end the show at Kyle Richards' celebration of life. We get to hear a beautiful song by Morgan Wade. And then, of course, a fight has to happen. So what's the fight? Well, Crystal Minkoff is sitting with Garcelle and Anne-Marie Wiley. And Anne-Marie Wiley brings up Sutton's esophagus and what is that all about? And Garcelle is like, why are you obsessed with this woman's esophagus, you Fruit Loop? In Beverly Hills, we only care about what you're wearing, your purses, and maybe your plastic surgery. And Crystal Minkoff, is like peaks up because as part of this discussion, Anne-Marie makes it sound like this esophagus issue could be related to an eating disorder. And that eating disorders, when you binge and purge, could cause problems with your esophagus. And remember, Kyle had brought up that Sutton pushes her food around the plate and doesn't really eat. And so there's a lot of different vibes happening. Is she a early morning drinker that drinks a lot? Is she not eating food? So she's got an eating disorder of some sort, or maybe even worse, binging. And Crystal suffered from that. So when she hears Anne-Marie, start talking about Sutton's eating disorder, she's on attack mode. And so now she's going to attack Anne-Marie Wiley. She's been activated and triggered, and the fight is going to begin between the two of them on this basis. Okay. See you in a few hours, you guys. 12 noon is the live, East Coast time, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Don't forget to go to the live tab. That's where we'll be. Can't wait to hear your thoughts.